Sai Ram. Have you read the Tapovanam? It is a holy book for daily recitation about the sacred life story of Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. It is to be read as a spiritual exercise dedicated to the Lord. The continuous reading or listening of this book will take us back to the glorious life of Swami. When participating in this holy activity, while focusing on Swami, you will be able to develop your focus and concentration as well as notice an elevation of your inner being. It also brings about a pure heart and sends positive vibrations of peace and love to all mankind. Every event and incident here will take you closer to spiritual realization. The completion of this spiritual activity with devotion and dedication will earn you the grace of our beloved Bhagavan. So do not miss this opportunity. Save the date, make the time, and join us for this devotional reading, Sai Ram.
Chapter 2 Shirdi Sai, Parthi Sai. At first, name and form are essential. That is the reason why avatars come, so that God can be loved, adored, worshipped, listened to, and followed, and finally realized as nameless and formless. Baba. Who is the Sathya Sai Baba? Is this Swami who displays inordinate, superhuman, captivating powers truly God? Is he an incarnation? We do not know even our own nature fully. We are incapable of understanding the true nature of even our closest associates. How can we then comprehend the complexity of principle and personality of an incarnation? One understands the nature of the moon at least to some extent. Although we have only the moonlight to go by and lamps as reference points, can be of little use. Similarly, if we venture to understand Lord Sai, we have to fall back on the only measuring tools available to us, namely the illustrative incidents provided by Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba himself and also his own messages.
Jodi Adipalli Somappa. It was 25th November 1958. After witnessing Swami's birthday festivities at Prasanthi Nilayam on the 23rd, Venkataram and his family left by car for Bangalore. When they reached village Bagipalli on the way, there was a crisis as their little girl Geeta Suddha was found to have stopped breathing. The family felt that she was on the verge of dying, if not already dead. In their agony, the family members looked around for help. An old man, apparently a farmer, appeared from nowhere. He came near and took the baby in his arms. At his touch, miraculously, the girl showed signs of life and cried. They were surprised to see the girl, whom they thought dead, come back to life so suddenly. Venkataram, the father of the little girl, was overjoyed and as a mark of gratitude offered a rupee to the unknown benefactor. The old man politely refused it. When Venkataram asked for his name, he said that he was known as Jodi Adi Palli Somappa. Later on, Swami narrated this incident to Sri Kasturi. I went there in the form of an old villager, he said, and it was I who gave life back to the dead child. Sri Kasturi wanted to know why Swami had thought of that peculiar name and whether any significance was attached to it. Swami explained, Adipalli means the pristine village, the original one, which is nothing but Kailasam, Lord Shiva's abode. Jodi means a couple. Sumappa, Sa plus Uma, means Lord Shiva together with Uma, his consort. Sri Sathya Sai Baba thus revealed his real identity, that he is the personification of Lord Shiva and Goddess Shakti, Shiva Shakti. On other occasion, Swami asked someone by the name of Kailasam what would his name mean. He was somewhat taken aback as he did not know. He struggled in vain for a whole week searching for the answer to Swami's question. Then Swami himself explained to him, Kailasam signifies the cleanest, purest and flawless crystal. It is also a symbol of the purest, untainted heart. Lord Shiva chose Kailasam as his celestial residence, and he also resides in a pure heart.
Premakutiram. There stands on the highway close to Bagepalli a building called Premakutiram, the cottage of love, and in its vicinity stands the marvelous structure celebrated as Sarvadharma Stupam, incorporating the cardinal principles of all the religions of the world. It was known as Premakutiram at the time it was established in 1980. It was then known as Sri Sathya Sai Seva Siviram Service Camp. The organizers were Sai devotees, and they used to serve refreshments to pilgrims on their way to Prashanti Nilayam to attend the festivals there, and also on their way back. By virtues of its dedicated service, the Siviram received Baba's special appreciation and blessings. On 30th November 1980, Swami visited the Siviram and told the organizers, "My blessings are always available in plenty to whosoever is dedicated to doing good." Inspired by Swami's blessings, the Siviram widened its activities with renewed vigor. In due course, the Sarvadharma Samanvaya Trust also came into being. It devoted itself to the establishment of a Seva Sadan, orphanage, and an aged people's home. It so happened that Mrs. Anjali Devi, the celebrated Telugu film actress, Miss P. Sushila, the well-known singer, and some other were on their way to Puttaparthi. The organizers greeted them and requested them to stop for a while and accept prasadam, refreshment blessed by Lord, provided at the Siviram. But famed travelers did not appreciate the nice gesture. They mistook the host to be the usual run of cinema fans who were always eager to rub their shoulders with film folk. Disdained the kind offer, they went on their way. When they were with Swami later, he gently admonished them, "I am present not only in Prashanti Nilayam, but also in the Seva Siviram in Bagepalli." The lesson went home. On their return journey, they made it a point to stop at the Sibiram. They profusely apologized to the organizers and humbly accepted prasadam from their hands before resuming their journey. Swami is known to move about in the area around Bagepalli, assuming various forms at will. No doubt he does this for the well-being of the residents there. On 7th June 1996, Swami inaugurated the aged people's home there and he announced, "This Sibiram is Premakutiram, Sri Sathya Sai Premakutiram." Ever since, it has been known by that name. The sacred touch of his lotus feet has often sanctified the Premakutiram. On 11th June 2000, Bhagwan again visited Premakutiram and, to the pleasure of the devotees, declared open the rest house for the aged, the temple for Lord Ganesha, and the cowshed.
Baba the Shiva Shakti. Bhagwan was once walking on the sandbanks of river Chitravati in the company of his devotees. He was smiling enchantingly and moving gracefully. That attracted a cameraman who readied himself to take a photo. When he requested Swami, "Just one picture please," Swami tried to put him off. "No, Bangaru, no," but the photographer already clicked his camera. When in due course the film was developed and printed, the photograph showed Swami as Ardhanarishwara, the divine dual form of Lord Shiva, one half as Shiva and the other half of his consort Devi Parvati. Around 1945, when the Shera processions were taken out from the old temple in Puttaparthi, Swami used to be dressed up as Ardhanarishwara. Among those who witnessed the exaggerated form were his adherent devotees, Kumaramma and Sakamma, who used to recall his splendid vision quite often. During the Treta Yuga, there lived a great rishi called Maharishi Bhardwaja. He loved Vedic learning and devoted hundreds years of his life to it. Even so, he could not complete his studies. Realizing this, there could be no end to his studies, he set out doing tapas in the name of Devendra, the lord of the Devatas. Devendra finally appeared before the Maharishi and told him, "You will never be able to attain full understanding of the Vedas. Give up this fruitless pursuit. Instead, perform the Savitra Yagna, which will bestow you on the spiritual fulfillment and hope to obtain through Vedic studies." Maharishi Bhardwaj also received the necessary procedural instructions from Devendra. The Maharishi desired very much that Goddess Shakti should be personally present at the Yagna. He went to Kailasham for inviting her in person. He found Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati dancing together and totally engrossed. The rishi could not find a convenient moment to make his request to Goddess Shakti. 7 days passed and he waited and waited. He was having darshan of only Lord Shiva, not of Shakti. He felt disappointed and miserable. On the 8th day, however, Shakti gave him just a sideward glance, smiled softly, then turned quickly away and resumed her dance. Sage Bhardwaj mistook this Devi Shaktis as deliberately sighted him. He immediately left Kailasham and headed home. While coming down the hill on his back way, suddenly his left leg and hand went out of control, as if they were dead. His speech was gone. One eye went blind. Apparently, he had a stroke of paralysis. Lord Shiva came to his rescue. He drew near and consoled him with kind words. "Don't worry, my dear Rishi. Devi Shakti has truly blessed you, as well as your yagya." With these reassuring words, the Lord sprinkled some water on from his kamandala, the pitcher, onto the discouraged sage. Immediately the rishi regained his faculties. Both Lord Shiva and Goddess Shakti promised that they would together attend his yagya and bade him farewell.
Bharadwaja successfully completed his yaga in due course. Both Lord Shiva and Devi Shakti attended it and blessed him. As a token of their pleasure, Lord Shiva promised the Rishi, "Both of us will incarnate in human form in your Gothram, Vamsam, dynasty, no less than 3 times. In the first incarnation, I will be Sai Baba in Shirdi. In the second, both of us together will incarnate in Puttaparthi as Sathya Sai Baba. Finally, Devi Shakti will incarnate as Prema Sai." He went on to say, "O Rishi, when you came to Kailasam, Devi Shakti ignored you for 8 days. In atonement thereof, when both of us take human form in your dynasty, Devi Shakti too will suffer in the same way as you had suffered in Kailasam. When that happens, I will sprinkle holy water on Shakti and make her regain the faculties in the same way as I restored yours in Kailasam." On 29 June 1963, Bhagavan Sai Baba suffered a stroke due to thrombosis, and the left side of his body was paralyzed. Hundreds of devotees who had assembled in Prashanti Nilayam were agonized on seeing the suffering of the Master. During that week, Swami was in coma for 3 days. He survived 4 heart attacks. Disconsolate devotees could do nothing but shed bitter tears in utter helplessness. After a full week, on the Guru Purnima day, 6th July, Bhagavan was very carefully brought down from his upper floor apartment to the bhajan hall on the ground floor in the arms of Sri Kasturi, Sri Rajareddy and Sri Krishnappa. It was obviously difficult to seat Baba as usual in his throne on the elevated dais. So, the silver throne was brought down and placed on the ground close to the dais. Soft cushions were positioned as to avoid discomfort to Baba, and he was slowly eased into it. Baba's left hand was stiff. The left leg was equally out of control. His eyes too were unclear. On finding their beloved Lord in that terrible state of suffering, the devotees began to wail loudly. Then Swami whispered to Sai Kasturi in barely intelligible words, "This illness is not mine. On my own volition, I have taken over this illness onto myself. No disease can ever assail me. Let nobody worry. I cannot bear if my devotees suffer." Sri Kasturi used the microphone to announce Baba's words to the gathering. Swami gestured for water to drink. When a tumbler of water was held to his lips, he could not hold it properly, and the fingers of his right hand slipped into the water. With those fingers, he sprinkled a little water on the limped left hand and the left leg. He gently stroked his left hand with his right hand, and after, in a few moments, stroked his left leg with both his hands. The astonished assembly of devotees, now delirious with joy and ecstasy, realized that Swami had cured himself. They heard him addressing them in the microphone, "Prema Swarupulara, O embodiments of love." He began delivering his customary address on the auspicious day of the Guru Purnima. Swami spoke for an hour, regaling the audience with his characteristic eloquence, lucidity, and exquisite humor. He related the 8-day suffering of Rishi Bharadwaja, at the end of which Lord Shiva made him whole by sprinkling holy water on his paralyzed limbs. Swami recalled the Lord's promise that he and his consort would incarnate on the earth as Shiva Shakti, that Shakti, represented by the left side of the body, would suffer for 8 days, at the end of which Lord Shiva, the right side of the body, would restore her to health by sprinkling holy water. In ringing tones, Swami declared, "I am Shiva Shakti. born in the Gothram of Rishi Bharadwaja, by virtue of the boon conferred on him by Lord Shiva and Goddess Shakti in the Treta Yuga.
Life story of Lord Shirdi Sai. People knew only the later part of Shirdi Sai Baba's life, that is, subsequent in his life in Shirdi. No details were available regarding his earlier life, when he was born and where. Who were his parents? What was his life like prior to his appearance in Shirdi? These remained unknown until Sri Sathya Sai Baba revealed them in Prashanti Nilayam on 28 September 1990, the date and month coinciding with the birthday of Sri Sai Baba, as declared by Baba. Obviously, little known secrets of an incarnation can be brought to light by none else but another incarnation. The life story of Shirdi Sai, as disclosed by Sri Sathya Sai Baba, is given here. In the village of Patri, situated in the then Nizam's dominions, lived a devout couple named Ganga Baba and Devagiri Amma. The lady was an ardent devotee of Goddess Gauri, consort of Lord Shiva, also known as Parvati. Her husband was a devotee of Lord Shiva. They had no children. This made them all the more detached from worldly concerns. They spent all their time in worship of Lord Shiva and Devi Parvati. Ganga Baba plied a boat for a living. It was the rainy season and the river was in flood. Fearing that his boat might be swept away if unattended, Ganga Baba told his wife that he would go to the banks of the river and stay there overnight with his boat and take care of it. She gave him his evening meal at 7 p.m. and finished her own meal soon after he left. At about 9 p.m., there was a knock on the front door. Thinking that it was her husband and wondering what made him come back so soon, she anxiously opened the door. An old man was standing outside. He promptly stepped in and said, "Oh lady, it is very cold outside. Will you kindly give me a little space inside for spending the night here?" Hospitable by nature, she produced a mattress, gave it to him, and showed him a place on the veranda to sleep in. She retired to her own room, closed its door, and went to bed. But not long after, the old man knocked on the door again. When she opened it, he said, "Oh kind lady, I am feeling hungry. May I have a little rice to eat?" Finding nothing worthwhile in her kitchen except some milled grain, she prepared a little meal with curds and gave it to him. She went back to her room, closed the door, and prepared to sleep. After a little while, the old man once again knocked on the door. When she opened it, he said, "Dear lady, my feet are aching. Will you kindly massage them a little?" She was startled. She went into her puja room, fell at the feet of Goddess Parvati in tears and cried, "O Divine Mother, what is this terrible test you are putting me to? What should I do now? Kindly save me from this humiliating situation." In a few moments, she regained her composure. An idea flashed in her mind. Leaving by the rear door of the house, she went in search of somebody who could be of service to her guest on payment. Her efforts bore no fruit, and she returned home in despair. Suddenly there was a knock on the rear door. When it was opened, a woman stepped in and said, "Madam, it seems you came by to my house asking for help to attend an old man here. I have come to offer my services." Devagiri Amma rejoiced that her earnest prayers had been answered. She took the woman onto the veranda, left her with the old man, and went back to her own room, closing its door behind her.
That old man who asked for such strange service from a saintly lady, and the woman who came forward to serve him were no ordinary humans. They were Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati. They began talking with each other. Lord Shiva said, "Devi Parvati, grant this devout lady whatever she earnestly desires." Goddess Parvati replied, "You are the Supreme Lord. You do it yourself." Lord Shiva answered, "I have come here to test her devotion, but you have come here in response to her earnest prayers. It would be appropriate if you granted boons to her." Once again there was a knock on the bedroom door. Now that there was another woman in the house, Devi Amma opened the door without any hesitation. She found Lord Shiva and her beloved Devi Gauri standing in front of her in resplendent glory. Her heart was full with happiness and joy. Unable to bear the flood of emotion, she fell at their divine feet. Goddess Gauri spoke, "I'm blessing you with a boy who will bring glory to your Vamsam, and also a girl so that you may derive punyam by giving her away in marriage, kanyadan, to someone." Devagiri Amma touched Lord Shiva's feet. He said, "My dear child, I'm pleased with your devotion. I myself will take birth in human form as your third child." The ecstatic lady, so amply blessed, with eyes brimming, did deep obeisance to Lord Shiva and Goddess Gauri. When she lifted her head, they had disappeared. She was now in raptures. She was now eager and impatient. When will the day dawn? When will her husband return home? How soon could she share her heavenly experience with him? She could sleep no more. At daybreak her husband came home and heard from his wife all that had happened. But he was in no mood to believe. He said, "Dear Devagiri, you seem to have lost your senses. You must be dreaming. Lord Shiva and Devi Parvati visiting our house in person? Giving you darshan? What nonsense!" He took to ridicule. She tried to convince him, but he refused to be convinced. Time sped by fast, and Devagiri Amma became pregnant. As she anticipated, a male baby took birth. A year later, a baby girl was born. Ganga Baba found that two of the events which his wife had mentioned had now come true. He was now willing to believe that Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati had indeed given darshan to his wife. He told his wife, "You were most fortunate. I was not." The thought got firmly rooted in his mind and grew with time. He was determined to secure darshan of Lord Shiva and Devi Parvati. Eventually his wife was pregnant again for the third time. This final piece of proof strengthened his mind decisively. Maya illusion gave way to enlightenment. Now he became restless. When should I get away from this house? When should I commence tapas, spiritual pursuit? How soon would I be able to obtain darshan of Lord Shiva and Devi Gauri? These thoughts were gnawing at his heart. He undertook vows of austerity. Meanwhile, 9 months passed. He became more and more impatient. He could wait no longer. He decided he would immediately retire to the forest to continue his spiritual pursuit vigorously. Devagiri Amma was not a person to draw back. She too accompanied him despite her delicate condition. On the way she delivered a male baby right there on the way in the forest beneath a banyan tree. That was 28th September 1838.
Devagiri Amma swaddled the newborn infant comfortably in a piece of a sari, covered him with soft leaves, and left him where he was born, and followed her husband. That is how nobody knew anything about the parents of that baby until Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba revealed it all over a century later. There was a Sufi fakir in the neighboring village. He had no sons. He found this abandoned baby and took him home. From 1838 to 1842, the child grew up in that fakir's house.
After the fakir passed away, his wife looked after the boy. His behavior was quite abnormal. He would go to Hindu temples and shout, "I am Allah! I am God! And Allah Malik hai! God is the master." Hindus used to trouble him. He would go into masjids and cry, "Rama alone is God!" and "Shiva is Allah!" Because of his odd and unconventional behavior, people of both faiths used to complain to the late fakir's wife. She found it difficult to set him right. She knew a person, Venkusa by name, who was a scholar and a devout person reputed to be an exalted soul. She took the unruly boy to Venkusa and left him in the great man's care. From 1842 to 1851, for 9 long years, he was looked after by Venkusa, who treated him with great affection and love. That aroused jealousy and malice in the hearts of the other residents in Venkusa's ashram. One day, the boy left that place and reached Shirdi, where he stayed for a couple of months. Thereafter, he left Shirdi too and wandered from place to place for several years. In the course of his travels, he arrived at a village named Dhupkheda. During his stay there, it so happened that a marriage was fixed in the household of a resident of the village named Chand Bhai Patel, whose wife's younger brother was the bridegroom. Accompanying the bridegroom's party, the peripatetic boy went to Shirdi. It was the year 1857 and he remained there for good till his passing away in 1918. He became known as Sai Baba. His extraordinary spiritual powers were soon noticed and people began flocking to him. He received them with kindness and compassion, patiently hearing their problems and suffering with sympathy and love, and gave appropriate directions to enable them to overcome their difficulties. He would give them mental strength and confidence and spiritual guidance. Gradually, his fame spread far and wide. The above account was given by Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. He also described the close relationship between Shirdi Sai Baba and his devotees such as Hari Vinayak Sathe, Kelkar, Shama and others. Sri Sathya Sai Baba said, towards the end of Shirdi Sai's earthly life, he told Abdullah, who was close to him, not to grieve at his passing away because he was going to be reborn and give him darshan again. When Abdullah inquired how soon that would be, Baba replied that it would be just 8 years later. The first incarnation took place in Maharashtra and the second one would be in Madras Presidency. Madras Presidency at that time included Puttaparthi, which is in the present state of Andhra Pradesh. Abdullah further asked Baba in what form he would appear in the coming incarnation. Baba replied that he would bear the name of Satyam. Evidently, what he was referring to is this present incarnation of Sri Sathya Sai. The two bodies are no doubt different, but their divinity is one and the same, said Swami. Bhagwan concluded the absorbing story of his previous incarnation by explaining, the purpose of the first incarnation of Shirdi Sai was to give intimations of divinity. The second, the present one of Sathya Sai, is for gifting of divinity. And the third, the coming one of Prema Sai, will be for teaching divinity.
Shirdi Sais Promise. In the previous chapter, we briefly read about Srimati Gali Sharada Devi, an ardent devotee of Shirdi Sai Baba. Married at an early age, she begot 6 male children, but not even one survived beyond the 6th year of age. Immensely distressed, she went to Shirdi and begged Sai Baba to grant spiritual peace to her. He received her with sympathy, offered her solace, and facilitated her spiritual progress. She often begged him to initiate her into some potent mantra in order to help her in spiritual advancement. He was putting her off somehow or the other, appearing on occasions to be angry too. Sometime in 1918, a little before Shirdi Sai merged in the infinite, she held his feet firmly, pleading once again for mantra updesh. Apparently vexed with her insistence, Sai Baba turned on her in anger and kicked her in the chest. Deeply hurt, she left him, denied herself food, and slept that night in the open ground under a tree opposite Dwarakamai. Late in the night, the compassionate Baba approached her and gently pacified her with soothing words. My dear child Gauri, I'll tell you something. Let us go to the Lendi garden. How can I sleep soundly when you are in distress and are starved? On reaching the garden, he stretched his hand up and uttering, Allah Malik Hai, God is the Master, materialized a couple of puris and a bit of koya to go with them. When she tried to go and fetch drinking water, he stopped her and materialized a tiny pot of water in the same manner as he had produced the food a little earlier. After she ate and felt relaxed, he spoke in a pleasing tone. Look, my child Gauri, I will tell you something, but before that, you should hold my feet and promise me that you will not tell this to anyone. After she did so, he continued, I will be reborn in the Andhra region with this same name of Sai Baba. You will then come to me, enjoy my close company, and attain happiness. You are now well past the need for any mantra. After you see me in my second avatar, you may tell this to others when occasions arises. Sarada Devi considered herself most fortunate that her life was blessed. Soon after this incident, on Dashera Day, 15th October 1918, Sri Shirdi Sai shed his mortal coil at 2:30 p.m. and attained Mahasamadhi. More than 20 years sped by. She was now running an orphanage. She was traveling from place to place, giving Harikatha performances to raise funds. During her travels, she happened to go to Uravakonda. She had heard a lot about a miracle boy called Satyam. She went to see him in the house of Sri Sheshamaraju, the boy's elder brother, where the boy was then staying. Satyam noticed her and invited her to sit close to him. When he addressed her in a pleasing tone, Gauri, she was startled, as that was the same sweet and affectionate way Shirdi Sai alone, and nobody else used to address her. Satyam added, You owe me 16 rupees, do you remember? She was confused, particularly because she was seeing him for the first time. He went on, You had collected 40 rupees for sending to Shirdi, but you sent only 24 rupees through Balaram. So don't you owe me 16 rupees still? To reassure her, he said, I have reminded you about this merely to prove to you that I am Shirdi Baba. As you came in, you did not bother to offer me even namaskar, salutation, but just sat down as soon as you entered. Poor Sharda Devi was in tears. She fell on his feet and pressed them to her bosom just as she was habituated to do at Shirdi. Satyam calmed her and said, I had told you then, but you did not pay heed to my word. You forgot it altogether. By now, you have reached me. I am proceeding to Puttaparthi. Follow me, and I will let you know everything there. Later, at the instructions of Sri Sathya Sai, she took up permanent residence in Prashanti Nilayam. As mentioned earlier, Baba gave her the name of Pedaputtu. She lived in Baba's proximity in Prashanti Nilayam till the end of her life. Shirdi Baba would often display great anger, but Sathya Sai Baba is always a picture of sweetness and pleasantness. Swami once explained the nature of this attitudinal difference. When the mother is busy cooking in the kitchen, she gets irritated and angry if her children distract her by making even little disturbance. But when she later serves the cooked food to them, she is full of affection, love, and patience. The former avatar of Shirdi was the stage of preparing tasty dishes. Now, it is a stage of serving those dishes to you with love.
Bodies are two, but divinity is one. Om Sai Shirdi Sai Abeda Shakti Avataraya Namaha. As a child, Madhav S. Dikshit had seen Shirdi Sai Baba but spent the last phase of his life with Bhagwan Sathya Sai Baba at Brindavan in Whitefield near Bangalore. As a boy, he suffered from unbearable pain due to migraine. Hari Sitaram Dikshit, the elder brother of the boy's father, took him to Shirdi Baba. This Hari Sitaram Dikshit was generally known as Kaka Sahib Dikshit. Baba rubbed some ashes taken from his dhuni or fireplace on the forehead of the boy and brusquely ordered him to go away. The boy was taken aback at what he felt was a slap on his face and curt dismissal. He made up his mind never again to go to Baba. But his uncle H.S. Dikshit assured him that what he mistook as a slap was, on the other hand, Baba's blessing. Besides, what Baba ordered out so curtly to go away was not the boy, but his migraine. He added, "Every one of us here has been waiting and waiting for some such sign of Baba's grace. If only he would give a similar slap to anybody, he would feel immensely blessed." Ever since this incident, the vexatious migraine never appeared again. Several years later, having heard that Shirdi Baba had taken reincarnation as Sathya Sai Baba, M.S. Dikshit went to Puttaparthi along with some of his friends. It was 23rd October 1961, Vijaya Dashami Day. Speaking on that occasion, Swami said, "This divine power left the previous body in the year 1918. At that time, I told devotees I would come back again after 8 years. While putting down on paper what I had stated, Kaka Sahib Dikshit recorded in his diary that I promised to come back as an 8-year-old boy. This mistake occurred because Kaka Sahib Dikshit did not make his noting immediately on hearing me, but took a while to do so, then too, after a long time, so he relied solely on his memory. M.S. Dikshit happened to be at Puttaparthi for the Shivratri festivities. A doubt arose in his mind. What is this? Shirdi Sai Baba was an unassuming personality wearing simple clothes. Could he have taken on rebirth the form of the dandy I see before me? Here he seems to be dressed more like a cinema actor. All the while he was watching Bhagwan on the dais bathing Shirdi Sai's image with unending streams of vibhuti pouring out of a small vessel held above the head of the image. He watched also the miracle of Shivalingams, an elliptical symbol of the Supreme Being emerging out of Bhagwan's mouth. There followed a discourse from Bhagwan, in the course of which he said, "Some persons present here are thinking that it is quite odd that I should wear silk clothes like a cinema actor and that I sport a peculiar type of hairdo." Dikshit was startled. He had no doubt that Baba was surely referring to his own doubts and felt disturbed.
Baba summoned M.S. Dikshit into the interview room. There was a photograph of his late uncle, Kaka Sahib Dikshit, in his pocket. Swami saw the picture and said, "This is your uncle, H.S. Dikshit's picture. He was my devotee when I was in Shirdi. Do you still have any doubts in your mind?" All doubts in Dikshit's mind vanished, but a single ardent wish remained unfulfilled. He had very much desired to serve as the doorkeeper of Shirdi Baba's room. Bhagavan knew this. He fulfilled his desire by assigning the same job to him in Brindavan. Swami also said to him, "Your time has come to go to the heaven, but Swami has decided to increase your life by 8 years." Dikshit lived in a house right in front of the gate of Brindavan. He died 8 years later. The 2nd of October 1996 was a red letter day. Devotees worshipped 1008 pairs of padukas
replicas of Baba's sandals, on that day in the grand venue of Sai Kulwant Hall. Dr. D.J. Gadiya spoke on that occasion. When Baba spoke later, he referred to Dr. Gadiya and said, "He is the son of M.S. Dikshit and grandson of Kaka Sahib Dikshit, who had lived in Shirdi." This Dr. Gadiya did not see him, but I saw him. His father, M.S. Dikshit, brought and showed to me the diaries kept by Kaka Sahib Dikshit. He had recorded therein that whatever difficulties one might face in life, one should never give up Swami. This doctor's father, M.S. Dikshit, stayed in Vrindavan for 30 years. It was I who encouraged this Gadiya to study medicine and sent him to Manipal. Subsequently, I pressed him to go to London. Thus, the association of this person with Sai Baba comes down from his forefathers' time long ago. This is what applies to everyone here. Otherwise, there is no possibility at all of your ever coming here. You have entered onto this path only by virtue of the cumulative stock of good fortune and punyam acquired over several previous lives. There are crores of people in India. How many of them are able to come here? Many people do have the desire to come, yet they are unable to fulfill their desire. It is a matter of divine blessing that you have been able to come to this holy place, Swami said.
Baba is all pervasive. Tidemand Johnson, a Norwegian from Oslo, happened to come to Puttaparthi. Swami materialized a ring and presented it to him to ward off the problems he was beset with. A few years later, while traveling in Bangladesh, he lost that ring in a river near Chittagong. A month after the loss, when Tidemand arrived in Whitefield, Bhagwan came to him and placed the lost ring in his hand. Swami told the astounded Tidemand, "This ring came into my hands because I was there in that river. Not only in that river, I am present in every river, everywhere. Swami is all pervasive, omnipresent." Once a lady devotee from Kanpur came to see Shirdi Sai in Dwarka Mai. She saluted him and sat down. Baba asked her whether her birthday celebrations of her son had gone on well. She told him, "Baba, we spent the day happily. We invited all our relatives and feasted them. Prior to that, we arranged all the eatables in a silver place as offerings to you and left the plate in the puja room. As little later, we wanted to serve that prasadam to the guests, but we found that the plate had disappeared. Only and my husband and I, and none else, entered the puja room. How could it disappear? We all felt unhappy at losing it. Baba, what's happened?" Sai Baba replied, "Do you remember that as you placed the plate before me in the puja room, you prayed to me to come personally on the happy occasion of your boy's birthday and partake of the Navedam. As you desired, I came there and ate them all. Not being sure whether you wouldn't believe it, I brought away the silver plate with me. Here it is." He pushed his hands behind the pillow on which he was leaning, drew out the plate and gave it to her. She was immensely surprised and delighted. Abdullah was regularly cleaning that place in Dwarka Mai thoroughly. He would rearrange the cushions and bedsheets daily as a part of his course. Abdullah did not turn up on that particular day and someone else did his job. No one, however, had found any plate there earlier. How did it suddenly make its appearance now? We can understand what Bhagwan means when he says he is omnipresent.
I know you don't. Sathya Sai Baba was then touring Kerala. At the request of his devotees, he visited a village near Trivandrum, now known as Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala. In his entourage was Dr. S. Bhagwantam, the celebrated scientist. Devotees far and near attended the meeting held there. Swami pointed to Dr. Bhagwantam, who was by his side, an old lady standing in a corner of the huge gathering. He mentioned that he had known her ever since her childhood. Dr. Bhagwantam wondered in his mind, Baba is much younger, that woman is evidently much older. How could it be that her childhood is known to Swami? He asked Swami, Baba, you are but 30 years old. That old woman must be in her 70s. How is it possible that you know her ever since she was a child? Baba promptly clarified that he had known her in his previous incarnation. A little later, Dr. Bhagwantam went around among the people gathered. He quietly approached the old woman, engaged her in conversation and inquired, Did you ever visit Shirdi? She replied, When I was a little child, my uncle, the younger brother of my father, took me to Shirdi for Baba's darshan. Baba gave me a pendant that I still wear around my neck. Here it is. She showed it to Dr. Bhagwantam, whose doubts were then cleared. When we hear of this incident, we are reminded of a verse in the Bhagavad Gita at the beginning of chapter 4. Sri Krishna, we read there, told Arjuna, I taught this immortal yoga long ago to Vivaswan, the sun god. He conveyed it to Manu, who imparted to his son Ikshvaku. Now again I have imparted this ancient yoga to you. Arjuna queried, O Krishna, the sun god is there ever since the creation. He dates back to remote antiquity. You belong to the present age. How is it possible that you have taught this to the sun god so long ago? Lord Krishna explained, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tava cha Arjuna tani aham veda sarvani na tvam vetta parantapa. He, Arjuna, you and I have passed through numerous births. I possess the awareness of all those births, but you do not. Om Shri Sathya Sai Parabrahmane Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
End of Chapter 2.
Chapter 3. Sambhavami Yuge Yuge. I incarnate again and again. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadhatmanam shrujamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkrutam dharma sanstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 4, verse 7.8. Puttavardhini. The present-day village of Puttaparthi was known in olden times as Gollapalli, the village of cowherds. The whole area was populated with cowherds and their cows. One day, a cowherd of the village noticed that one of his cows had returned from grazing fields with an empty udder. This continued to happen for the next several days. He decided to stalk her quietly to the fields to find out who might be stealing her milk. The cow went as usual to the woods, with the keeper watching her every movement with peeled eyes. She approached a snake hill, out of which emerged a wondrous serpent, wound itself around the cow's hind legs, and fed itself from the udder without hurting the cow. The cowherd lost his temper. It did not occur to him that this serpent might be something uncommon or divine. He picked up a heavy stone and hurled it at the serpent. Blood flowed out and stained the stone. The serpent died. Ever since that incident, cowherd families of Gollapalli gradually declined in numbers, and serpent hills proliferated all over. People believed that the dying serpent cursed the villagers, which was the root cause of their misery. As time passed, Gollapalli acquired the dubious distinction of being known as Puttavardhini, place where snake hills abound. The contrite villagers took the blood-stained stone which had killed the serpent and named it Gopala Swami, Krishna the cowherd, and installed it in the village for regular worship. The charming name of Krishna evokes the childhood pranks and amusing frolics of Lord Krishna, who grew up among cowherds. As a boy, he playfully stole milk, butter, and curds to feed himself and his cohorts and playmates. The villagers worshipped the stone as Krishna, the cowherd, as an act of penitence and atonement. Soon enough, the village prospered and grew and came to be known as Puttaparthi. During the reign of the great ruler Sri Krishna Devaraya of the Vijayanagar Empire, it earned renown as a stronghold of brave warriors who lent their services to the royal forces. A temple was built, an elaborate arrangement was initiated for regular rituals of worship in the traditional manner, that is, offer of puja, lighting of the sacred lamp, offer of incense and naivedyam to the deity, and so on. The prosperity of the village grew more and more. After the advent of Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai, he confirmed the divinity of that deity. At his instance, bathing of the deity or abhishekam and application of sandalwood paste all over were introduced. To the wonderment of the devotees, the stone revealed the divine form of Lord Krishna with flute in hand. There is in Puttaparthi a distinguished and devout family with the family name of Ratnakara. A great saint called Venka Avaduta was one of their ancestors. The paternal grandfather of Sathya Sai, named Kondamaraju, was a highly evolved soul and led a life of devotion to God. He could recite from memory stories and verses from the sacred epics of Sri Mahabhagavat and Ramayana. Inspired by a dream, he built a temple for goddess Satyabhama Devi, the consort of Lord Krishna. It is now known in Puttaparthi as Satyamma's temple. Lakshmamma was Kondamaraju's wife. The saintly couple had 2 sons. In memory of Venkavaduta, they were named Pedda or Elder Venkamaraju and Chinna or the Younger Venkamaraju. Both of them, like their father, became accomplished singers of devotional verses and songs.
Ishwaram. Some close relatives of Kondamaraju were residing in a village called Kolimikuntla in the Kolakundla taluk of Kurnool district. Their family name was Misraganda. Subbaraju of that family built a temple for Lord Shiva in his village. While the temple was under construction, Subbaraju was blessed with a female baby who was named Namagiri. While returning from a pilgrimage, Kondamaraju happened to visit that village. He was very much distressed to find that his relatives were leading an uneasy lives due to the depredations of dacoits active in that region. He invited them to come over and take permanent residence in the village of Karnataka Nagapalli on the other bank of river Chitravati, right opposite to Puttaparthi, which he said would be a safe haven. As an added incentive, he gave his word that he would accept Namagiri as his daughter-in-law. The Misraganda family soon shifted and settled down in Karnataka Nagapalli and took up farming. As divinely ordained, Subbaraju's daughter was wedded to Pedda Venkamaraju. Not quite pleased with the name his daughter-in-law was given by her parents, Kondamaraju changed it into Ishwarama, mother of Lord Ishwara, that is Lord Shiva. That name eventually proved not only quite appropriate but also prophetic. The devout couple begot a son, Sheshamaraju, and 2 daughters, Venkamma and Parvatama. To the great distress of Lakshmama, 4 miscarriages followed. She earnestly prayed to God to bless her family with another child.
Swami's incarnation. The moment of divine fulfillment was about to dawn. The prayers of numerous saints, sages, and renunciates for the incarnation of God on earth were about to be answered. The agony of suffering humanity moved the ever-merciful Supreme Divinity. Ishwarama was again pregnant for the 8th time. Quite significantly, Lord Krishna was born as the eighth child of his mother, Devaki Devi. The inscrutable, the incomprehensible, the universal absolute was now about to reveal himself. Musical instruments in the house, like mridagam, percussion instrument, and tanpura, stringed instrument, used to produce of their own accord musical sounds. People were surprised and also delighted at this extraordinary occurrence, but at the same time they were confused and concerned. Peda Venkama Raju went all the way to the nearby town of Bukkapatnam to consult astrologers. After carefully going through ancient texts, they inquired whether any lady in the house was pregnant. When the reply was affirmative, the astrologers said, "For the pleasure of the child in the womb, celestial musicians are providing entertainment. When divine incarnations are about to take place, such unusual incidents happen." They showed relevant parts of astrological treatises to Peda Venkama Raju in support of their opinion. It was 23rd November 1926. According to the Hindu calendar, it corresponded to Somawar Monday, Tadya, the third day after the full moon, Kartige month, Akshaya year, and Adra star. Hindus consider Mondays of the Kartige month as favorite days of Lord Shiva and perform special worship. From 4 a.m. on that day, Lachmama was deeply absorbed in the worship rhythm of Lord Sri Satyanarayana Swami being performed in the nearby house of a Purohit Brahmin priest. She was called several times as her daughter-in-law's delivery was imminent, but she ignored the calls. She decided not to return home without seeing the puja through and receiving the puja prasadam. She sat through and did indeed carry the prasadam home. She gave prasadam to her daughter-in-law. It was now 5:06 a.m. Cool breezes were wafting softly. Little bells on the top of the temple pillar, Dwaja Stambham, were producing gentle and melodious sounds. Inside the house, musical notes from the instruments spontaneously playing on their own were softly reverberating. At that wondrous moment, Sri Sathya Sai, the divine incarnation, was born. He had a tiny black mole birthmark on his left cheek. He had also another mole on his bosom, like the Srivatsa ornament adorning the bosom of Lord Mahavishnu. On his soles could be discerned the signs of Sankha, the conch, and Chakra, the circular disc, which are insignia of divinity.
Lakshmama, Ishwarama's mother-in-law, placed the newborn baby delicately on palm leaves, as tradition demanded, in a corner of the delivery room. A little later, she noticed a slight movement of the baby's bedsheets. When she picked up the baby, she found to her dismay a coiled cobra below the bed. True enough, Puttaparthi knew no dearth of snakes, but it was nevertheless quite unusual for a coiled cobra positioning itself as a bed for a newborn baby right in the delivery room. After the flutter caused by its presence cooled down, the snake was searched for, but it could not be found. There is absolutely no doubt that the snake was none other than Adisesha, the divine serpent who serves as a bed for Lord Sri Mahavishnu in Vaikunta. This is the very first demonstration of the divinity of Sri Sathya Sai. As the baby was born immediately after his mother had partaken of the prasadam, of Sri Lord Satyanarayana Swami, he was given the name of Satyanarayana. The old man, Kondamaraju, was immensely delighted with his name, for he was reminded of the incident in the Sri Mahabhagavat when Lord Krishna was born as the human incarnation of Lord Narayana. Lord Brahma presented himself before the child and paid homage thus: Sathya Vratam, Sathya Param, Tri Satyam, Satyasya Yonim Nihitam Cha Satya, Satyasya Satyam Ritasatya Netram, Satyatmakam Tvam Sharanam Prasanna. O Lord, you are the embodiment of truth. In fact, you are the truth itself. Only you are the eternal truth. Truth is the only path to reach you. O the personification of truth, I surrender to thee. Even if one goes by the name given to the little baby Satyam, it is evident that he is truly Lord Sri Narayana and the embodiment of truth, Satyam. The inner profound spiritual significance of the word Sathya has come out in all its striking appropriateness in Swami's life. Ritam and Satyam are the two bejeweled ornaments of the ears of Shruti Mata, Veda Mata, the mother goddess of the Vedas. When we contemplate deeply on the inner meaning and spiritual significance, even now we learn ever new beauties are revealed to us. Satyam, eternal truth, and Nityam, knowing no beginning or end, are worth meditating on.
Not conception, but Advent. In the Sri Mahabhagavat, it has been stated that Lord Narayana intended to incarnate on this earth as Sri Krishna and entered the womb of Devaki Devi. After Bhagwan Satya Sai proclaimed, "I am that Krishna of yore," a doubt arose in the mind of a learned scholar named Sangupatala Rama Sharma. He was the scholar laureate of the ruler of Venkatagiri, and he was a learned scholar of scriptures and sacred epics. One day, he happened to be with Sri Sathya Sai Baba in the mandir when spiritual matters were being discussed. He asked, "Swami, was your birth through normal conception or by Advent?" Everyone present was intrigued and somewhat surprised. What is this odd question, and, in any case, what is its property? They wondered. But Swami certainly knew the inner substance and profound significance of the question. He turned towards Ishwaram, the mother, who was sitting in the front row, and said, "Tell Rama Sarma, what happened on that day when you were lifting water from the well?" Ishwarama then narrated her experience. "When I was lifting water from the well," she said, "suddenly I saw a ball of bluish sparkling light rolling down from the sky. It entered my body and I lost consciousness. When I regained my senses with ministrations of my mother-in-law, I told her what had happened. She advised me not to breathe a word about it to anyone, because people might draw all sorts of undesirable and funny inferences." Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai now turned to Rama Sarma and said, "Do you now understand, Rama Sarma? My birth was not through conception, but by Advent." Kondamaraju used to take this extraordinary child into his puja room and seat him there. As he would perform the worship, he would note that the child's presence gave him immense tranquility of mind, and he could effortlessly concentrate on God in meditation. Why not? It is perfectly understandable. Whoever enthrones Bhagwan in his heart is bound to experience transcendental peace, which is something that every devotee knows from personal experience. The baby was extremely handsome. Neighbouring womenfolk used to spend hours and hours playing with him, caressing and embracing him. Ishwarama never bothered to know what caste or community or faith they belonged to. She raised no objection whatsoever. The baby too learned to love them and like their company. He would often run away from his mother's lap to the company of others. He was indeed restless except in their company. Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai once declared that he would unfailingly go to those who yearned for him wholeheartedly. When we hear of his childhood pranks and plays, we realize that even as a child, he had been practicing what he declared much later after he grew up.
The house next to the one adjoining Kodamaraju's belonged to a Karinam, village revenue official. The lady of the house was Subhamma. Whenever she took the charming child in her arms, his face would glow in happiness. He would titter with delight, and she would experience supreme joy. She had no children of her own. She often took this child to her home as proudly as if she was bringing home precious treasures. She smothered him with her motherly love. Subhamma's family was a Brahmin family and was vegetarian in food habits. As Satyam always insisted on going to her house and found much happiness there, people used to observe that, like his grandfather Kodammaraju, little Satyam would also be a vegetarian, and hence he preferred to spend much of his time in the environment of Subhamma's house. In fact, Satyam was not as happy in his own house as he was in Subhamma's. Some of the relatives of Kodamaraju's family used to comment that Ishwarama was Devaki, the natal mother of Lord Krishna, while Subhamma was Yashoda, his foster mother. Another unusual feature of Satyam was that he never used to ask for any particular thing to eat, nor for any particular piece of clothing. Clothes used to be brought from the neighboring towns of Hindupuram and Anantapuram for all children in the family. The little ones would gather around them and eagerly snatch up pieces they preferred. But Satyam would cheerfully accept whatever was left behind. He never indicated that he had any choice of his own. There was nothing that he would particularly prefer. On the other hand, when he saw the other children in happiness, Satyam's face would bloom with pleasure and satisfaction. "Your happiness is my food," Swami declared many years later. That surely must have held true even when Satyam was a mere child. He was full of pity, compassion, love, and sympathy for any living being subjected to hardship and grief. A few playful boys once collected about a dozen frogs and were carrying them in a basket. They planned to have fun by subjecting the poor creatures to some sort of torture. Satyam requested that they be freed. The boys did not agree. Suddenly, Satyam transformed them into pigeons through his divine will. He told them that there were no frogs in their basket. When they disbelievingly opened the lid to see, the birds escaped into the sky. We can read a spiritual meaning too in this incident. From that day to this day, Bhagavan has been transforming ordinary individuals who are entrapped and living like frogs in the deep mire of ignorance, Anyan, into strong human beings who are bold and happy and capable of soaring free in the spiritual firmament, like birds in the sky. Even as little boy, Satyam found natural beauty. He spent much time contemplating nature. Mountain peaks, stars, and sky gave him profound happiness as he contemplated on them spellbound. At such times he appeared serene and serious, way beyond his tender age. The women of Puttaparthi, who had seen him so lost in his thoughts, used to refer him as Brahmanyani, one who attains supreme realization. They might have no doubt said so in mirth and frolic. They could never suspect that the boy they were making fun of was indeed a Brahmanyani.
Divine touch. Ishwaram and Karanam Sumamma would often sit at dusk in front of portico of their house, overlooking the street, and spend time in conversation. Right in front of them in the street, Satyam would wear a bandage across his eyes and play hide and seek with his colleagues. That was the time when cattle headed home from pasture. There was always the risk of unruly animals trampling passerby. Ishwarama would naturally feel apprehensive about her darling child's safety, but Subhamma would always reassure her, "Calm yourself and just keep watching. Nothing untoward will happen." The blindfolded Satyam would catch hold of some rogue animal. Under his gentle touch, the animal would become docile, lower its head and move away harmlessly. Such incidents used to leave onlookers baffled. Probably because Satyam was born under the auspicious influence of the Ardra star, his heart would melt at the very sight of suffering. Ardra in Sanskrit means compassionate. If a hungry person stood at his door, Satyam would run inside, bring some food, and place it affectionately into the outstretched hands. The glow of happiness in the eyes of the hungry people would fill Satyam's heart with satisfaction. He used to bring to his home persons shivering from cold and gave them clothes to cover themselves. It was customary for people to carry fowl upside down by their legs, bound together and heads hanging down, a position torturous to the poor birds. Bullocks were goaded to move faster by twisting their tails cruelly. At the sight of such insensate cruelty, Satyam would suffer the agony of the poor birds and animal in himself. After finishing school in Puttaparthi, Satyam went to nearby town of Bukkapatnam and enrolled in middle school. The loving mother watched with bated breath as her little child prepared day after day to go to Bukkapatnam. He was hardly out of his cradle, but now he had to walk all the way to town. Satyam would put on a white shirt and shorts, apply vibhuti on his forehead, and a red dot of vermilion to lend action to it. With a small bag containing his simple midday meal of cooked ragi, a coarse grain in one hand and bag of books in the other, he would bid goodbye every morning. The poor lady's eye would swim in tears. He would leave him home at about 8:30 in the morning and return only at dusk. How could she endure the agony of his absence? Until then, sadness haunted her every moment of the day. His fellow pupils at school were envious of Satyam. He was evidently the cynosure because of his excellent sense of cleanliness and immaculate orderliness. As soon as the boys stepped out of the village, they would catch hold of Satyam and dock him in the river Chitravati to make his spotless white clothes dirtier than theirs. Their dirty deed accomplished, they would feel happy and fulfilled, but never would Satyam complain to his beloved mother against them.
The teacher's chair. In a school in Bukkapatnam, a teacher by the name of Kondappa was dictating notes to his pupils who were assiduously taking them down. Satyam alone was not doing so, which annoyed the teacher. How could he know that Satyam, the all-knowing and all-comprehending, had no need for taking down any notes? He ordered Satyam to stand upon the bench, a punishment usually meted out to delinquent boys. The boy meekly obeyed. Time passed and the bell struck to mark the end of that class, and Kondappa had to leave. Though he tried to get out of his chair, he could not as it stuck to his bottom. The teacher who was to take the next class was Mehbud Khan. He came in and understood the situation. He asked Satyam to get down and be seated. As soon as Satyam took his seat, Kondappa was automatically released from his own chair. This was but one small leela of Satyam that was played merely to demonstrate that he was no ordinary run-of-the-mill schoolboy. News of this episode soon spread in Bukkapatnam and caused some unrest too. The incident proves that an incarnation of God cannot be bound by man-made limitations. In due course, Kondappa recognized Satyam's divinity and also wrote and published some poems in his praise. When the story of the teacher's chair reached Ishwaram, she feared for the future of her boy's education. She cautioned Satyam, if you do not study hard and succeed in your schooling, you will have no future but to eke out a living by tending cattle. Well, can a word of Bhagavan's mother ever go wrong? Swami did not work hard at his studies in school, but as this divine mother had warned, he is certainly tending cattle. What are the animals now in his care? All living beings are now under his care and protection. That is why he has verily become Pashupati, the Lord of animals, one of the attributes of Lord Shiva. His simple-minded mother had never dreamt that her darling child, so remiss at school, would eventually take up such a glorious job, that of minding the universe as Bhagavan. The end of the year saw Satyam appearing for the final examinations held in the town of Penugonda. He came first, and the people of Penugonda took out a grand procession in honor of this brilliant boy. In her heart of hearts, Ishwarama was delighted at the success of a charming boy, but she was at the same time worried that this might arouse more jealousy amongst the other boys. Often did she wonder and feel astonished at some of the words uttered by Satyam, his decisions and conclusions, the sharpness of his views, and the manner in which he expounded them. Shupama's husband, Dekaranam, was sporting a moustache all too odd and prominent, somewhat in the style of Hitler. His conduct was also rather unusual. Satyam composed songs making fun of him and organized his colleagues to sing them in public. Ishwarama would not approve of such mischievous activities. She entrusted the task of correcting Satyam, of all people, to Shubhama. Shubhama admonished Ishwarama. That little guru knows how to distinguish between good and bad. Leave it to him and let him be. With a mere wave of his hand, Satyam would materialize whatever his companions asked for, be it a fruit or a flower or sweets. When they asked to know where he was getting them from, he merely said that some celestial beings were giving them to him. Yes, there can be no doubt about what he claimed. Swami is the Supreme Master. It is but natural that heavenly beings should serve him with whatever he demands.
Tiger hunted chided. It was around noon one day when a driver in uniform was noticed striding into Puttaparthi. As he walked in, birds on branches of trees raised loud cries of fear and distress. Satyam was sitting on the front portico of Karanam Subama's house, conversing with his friends. As the driver stepped up there, the children scattered in fright. The man told Satyam that his master's jeep got stranded on the other bank of the river Chitravati. The master was in a hot temper. Having heard that a boy of miracles was in this village, he had come here to obtain some vibhuti if it could get the master out of his problem. Satyam agreed to follow him to the jeep. The master was proudly stroking the dead body of a tigress, evidently shot by him in the forest. Satyam said to him, "What harm has this poor animal done to you? Why have you killed it for no reason? Her two little cubs are missing their mother and feeling miserable. It was I who made your vehicle break down to make you realize this. Go back to those little motherless cubs, rescue them, and entrust them to the care of a proper zoo. Never should you kill a living being for your own pleasure and enjoyment. You might shoot, but only with a camera, not with a gun. That would bring you name and fame." Surprisingly, the engine of the vehicle sprang back to life with a mere touch of Satyam, and it went back the way it had come. Peter Venkamaraju, Satyam's father, was in a panic situation at home for defying an Englishman, that too, one who was sporting a gun. His little son might invite trouble from the police. On the other hand, the Englishman felt remorseful. Some time later, he brought the skin of a dead tigress and offered it to serve as a footrest for Satyam. Even today, it is there in Prasanthi Nilayam near Swami's throne, serving Swami as his footrest. Each and every incident of Swami's life serves as a mirror reflecting the essentiality of Swami's divine personality. Swami is the personification of ahimsa, principle of non-violence, embodiment of compassion and pity for helpless creatures. He is Jesus Christ and Bhagavan Buddha personified. Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba is the teacher of teachers. Om Sri Sathya Sai Prabhamane Namaha. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Sai Ram. Have you read the Tapovanam? It is a holy book for daily recitation about the sacred life story of Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. It is to be read as a spiritual exercise dedicated to the Lord. The continuous reading or listening of this book will take us back to the glorious life of Swami. When participating in this holy activity, while focusing on Swami, you will be able to develop your focus and concentration as well as notice an elevation of your inner being. It also brings about a pure heart and sends positive vibrations of peace and love to all mankind. Every event and incident here will take you closer to spiritual realization. The completion of this spiritual activity with devotion and dedication will earn you the grace of our beloved Bhagavan. So do not miss this opportunity. Save the date, make the time, and join us for this devotional reading. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram all. Just a reminder, we are now live on YouTube and Facebook. You can search on YouTube for Sai Organisation of Australia. Please subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to receive updates and reminders of our upcoming inspirational programs. On Facebook, please search for Sai Organisation of Australia and like and follow our account. Please visit our website on sai.org.au to keep updated with upcoming programs in the 96 Days devotional offerings, news of our service activities, and inspirational updates.